Hi guys, here from Pax Europiana from my hometown Linz. I'm here to share some of my pain and sorrow for the fact that the ideological debate in Austria has been going so dramatically wrong in the last 20 years, since I was focused more on Southeastern Europe and Ukraine. I have done what I could to contribute until I left in 2005 Austria, but then the last 15 or 17 years, I'm 15 years, I'm now since more or less 2 years back, and I try to have some impact again on the ideological debate in Austria, but it's very bad because it went so badly in the last 15 years of my absence, and it was before also very deeply problematic, but not so bad as it is now. I have touched the security question with NATO. That's on the agenda, obviously. I will work for that. I've touched also the issues of trade very often. 15 years long now there was a complete protectionist tendency, hating Mercosur and TTIP and CETA and all this terrible protectionist. There's also this xenophobia, which leads to the market closing of the labor market and the anti-enlargement agitation and populism, anti-Schengen populism. That's all a big drama. But also in the economic social questions, especially in taxation. That's one of my favorite topics, obviously. I'm also chairman of Europeans for Tax Reform. I have this network to promote flat and lower taxes, decent taxes. Now, for example, today we have this ideological debate, also the progress, that progressivity. Now let's put it like this. The term is that you basically, we call it in Austrian language, cold progression. That basically with higher inflation or higher wage returns, then you automatically go into higher tax brackets. And then there is this kind of historic consensus that this is no longer the case, because there will be also inflation adjusted increases for the tax brackets when they kick in. That's a very technical, but it's very ideological at the same time, and it shows what all goes wrong. Even the liberals think that's big progress. The People's Party think it's big progress that they will do inflation adjustment for the tax brackets when they kick in, instead of doing the decent thing, and then would be to cut the tax brackets and have less and lower and flatter taxes. That would be the logical thing. Not only for me as a chairman of the flat tax movement, but in general this is a more fairer and juster tax system. I mean, please, the response should be from the liberals or from anybody who is for business, economy, for justice and for freedom, that you reduce the tax rate. That's the answer for higher inflation, that's the answer for injustice, and that's absolutely logical, that you basically flatten the tax curve, that you make sure that you have lower taxes and that you have higher prosperity, more income for the people, and you reward work and performance. I mean, that's the logical idea of a fairer system. And here, I have made now 20 years campaign for that. Actually, in all over Eastern Europe, it's almost a flat tax system, meaning that you have more or less the same tax rate for income and for corporate, for personal taxes and for corporate taxes, that you also have this fairness in the system, that you basically don't have to cheat and tax evade, because no matter what you do, you pay more or less the same tax bracket. Here they're cleaning the street, that's very good. And you reward work and performance. That's very important. I always repeat it again and again. You need to tax consumption, because that you can more or less choose. You need subsidize obviously the very poor brackets of the population. That's very good. Help them, of course. We have to do that. And that's what all European welfare systems do, especially the Austrian and the German one. But more or less all of them. The Southern Europeans may be less effective, but they will also be much more effective if they follow that principle. Tax consumption, that means do not reduce VAT, do not exempt from VAT, have VAT for everybody. So you create a lot of volume of tax revenues, and also USA, please introduce VAT. And with this VAT revenue, you can have an efficient revenue-based system, and then obviously you also tax corporate profits, and they are all flat already, but on a 15-20% basis, not higher, as we unfortunately do it in Germany especially, very bad. And that should be also at 20% in the richer Western countries, 15 should be the average, 10% for the post-Soviet transition countries like Ukraine now. Absolutely important. That's the best way to do it. I repeat and repeat. Ukrainians didn't listen. Many in the Balkans listened, and it worked much better than here in Austria. I'm now at the Austrian Chamber of Commerce. Will do also one statement here, and also to be active on the moment. But then obviously it's very important to make that case. It's very important to be active and to make very clear a situation that we have a tax system which is taxing the rich at their wealth. That's what I'm in favor. Yes, tax the asset holders at the net asset value, but don't tax the performance, the people who are increasing wealth in the performance moment. When you have an employee with a high salary, very good. When you have a businessman with a high salary, very good, a high revenue, but then tax the asset value, not the performance value. This is the much fairer system, and that's what I'm calling. That's a fair and socially just way to raise revenues for the state. And progressivity is basically an invitation for unfairness. And it keeps the performance, the people down. The idea is all should have the same. And that's very wrong. That's why I'm calling for end of progressivity in the tax system and for taxing the wealth in asset value more, but basically raise from basically property and asset value taxation. That's a much better way. And then to tax also the system of the consumption and the wealth, but not the performance. And the performance not progressively. Yeah? I will also tax it. I'm for income tax, yeah, but on one rate for everybody the same, because you have a much fairer, much more efficient tax system. And that's what I'm campaigning for 20 years. And that's not achieved in Austria by all. We have 25 to 55. To 55. Then of course you have the effect that a higher performance get much more salary, because they have also to pay much more taxation. And you have also a lot of informality because of less registration. And that's of course very, very bad. And that's what I think it's time to end this progressivity in the tax system, and that should be the demand of the business community, of all people interested in fairness and in freedom and in performance and in growth. I understand, you know, the degrowth communities of the left, yeah, they want of course to end growth and to end prosperity. They love progressivity because it somehow equals everybody, huh? But it's not fair, because one year you have very good performance and you still have a low asset value, for example. So the idea is that people get more, so when they have more, you can tax them at the assets. And I think we should have a tax on the wealth, but not on performance in the year. And there's a big difference here. If you're in mathematics, it's a big difference if you have already assets, whatever the reason for that, or if you are going up. Going up should be rewarded, and that would be also this kind of social permissible system. That what I think is much better than what we have today, and that's what I'm calling. And the big success today is not to have the end of this cold progression, but the end of progressivity in the tax system at all. That's what I'm calling for, and that should be the fact. And so I'm a bit frustrated. All my efforts to somehow bring Western European modernity to Austria are not really very successful, because we are such in this kind of socialist thinking in all aspects, socialist and nationalist, unfortunately, in the labor market, in the trade system, in the tax system, in the European system, in the security debate. And that's a bit my frustration with the ideological debate of Austria, which is to this day quite nationalistic, quite xenophobic, quite protectionist, and quite in a socialist kind of consensus. And it's unfair, it's not open, it's not equal, it produces bad results, and it's a big problem for everybody involved. And unfortunately we don't have good results with it. And it's a bit of my frustration that I cannot win these ideological debates in the last years. Good. Sharing this, I continue my Linz Day, and I will post you with a lot of other priorities which I think we should have. Thanks a lot. More to come from Pax Europiana. Bye.